që krijohet përmjet aktorëve që janë pjesë e një territori siç është Ballkani në këtë rast ose të Shqipërisë dhe plot të tjera. Në këtë rast kam kënaqësinë që t'i jap fjalën për të mbajtur prezantimin e tij me temën rajonet të Maqedonisë, përcaktuesit e pjesëmarrjes së OSHC dhe organizatave të shoqërisë civile në agjendën e politikave rajonale. Marjan Nikolov është ambasador i organizimit CEPS, nëse besoj e njihni si strukturë, dhe është antari Qendrës Europiane për Studimet Urban, është përputhës shkencor aty dhe kryetari i Qendrës për Analiza Ekonomike, njëkohësisht edhe docent në Universitetin Slavonic në Macedoni.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I have some few words. I catch them. Okay, the topic, regions in Macedonia, but also the determinants of the civil society organizations. Now, why this topic? You remember Luis had the presentation, and the last thing he said was about some power. So, like, the journalists are the fourth power, but I believe that the civil society organizations are the neglected dimensions of having power as well in liberal democracies as it is Macedonia, Albania, Kosovo, Serbia, all these countries of the Western Balkans that should practically be liberal democracies, but are practically at the path of autocracies. So that's why I believe that the regional policy making should be somehow researched together with what are the linkages with the civil society organizations. The second dimension why I wanted to present you this topic is because, and the lady with the diplomatic background was talking about political will, and the political will presented by the Prime Minister of Albania and the political elites in Albania. Now, the political elites in Albania recently established the National Council it should be the forum between the civil society organizations and the Prime Minister office, actually the government, the politicians. So it is kind of institutionalization of the civil society organizations and the political factor and the political elites. Also going to the technical details related to the agency for supporting the civil society organizations, and then all the problems down the road related to the registration of the civil society organizations with the courts. It is not digitalized. Up to the moment where the civil society organizations cannot benefit from the legal right of refunding their VAT because of the lack of procedures and lack of understanding of the tax inspectors. Now, this is the context, and these are the reasons why I wanted to share with you some research that we have done related to the regional policy making and the civil society organizations. Of course, this the data and the research applies to Macedonia, but it can be easily replicated to each of the countries and Albania as well. Luis, please. Thanks. Okay, a little bit of background. There was a lot of discussion, of course, in all these countries and in Macedonia as well related to the unbalanced regional development. But the government wanted to do something in terms of to institutionalize and to legalize the challenges with the 2008 legislation in Macedonia for the law on balanced regional development. As you can see, Republic of Macedonia, given the size of the territory and population, and as per the NUTS classification of regions of the Eurostat, NUTS 1 and NUTS 2 is practically Macedonia. NUTS 3 are practically the 8 statistical regions in Macedonia, which from your point of view, it's the left-hand side graph presenting you the geographical map of Macedonia and the 8 statistical regions. Now, why the colors? The colors are presenting level of development, given a composite index that contains data on economy, social, demography, and other types of data. As you can see, the central one, light blue, north, is the Skopje region, capital city of Macedonia. And important message from the right-hand side graph is that message to take away is that the Skopje region is 5 times more developed than the lowest developed region of the 8 in Macedonia. Just to put again the focus on why the need for such a legislation and policies. The proper bylaws that we developed in order for this legislation to be implemented in practice is, of course, now how to measure the level of development, and second, in accordance with the measure of development, how to distribute the central budget allocations to go to the proper underdeveloped regions in Macedonia. As you can see, 2 types of indicators were designed for the composite indicator, socioeconomic and demographic indicator. The previous presentation was talking about, of course you can have the legislation, but the problem is how you enforce the legislation to work in practice, and number 2, is this social contract practically work? Are people really accepting what is put in the legislation? I can give you the case of Macedonia. It is strictly set in the law on balanced regional development that 1%, at least 1% of the GDP should be allocated from the central budget to go to the regions. At least 1%. Please look at the right hand, at the table. Right hand, as you can see, it's 100 times less than what was set in the law. Now, when there are questions from the experts on the executive power, which is the government, on why are they not respecting their own fiscal rules related to this, and the answer was always within the creative accounting, and they are saying, but look, there are other transfers from the proper ministries that are allocated for the purpose of the regional development, and if you sum them all, they are more than 2-3% of the GDP. But the problem is that I was part of preparation of this law on balanced regional development, and I know that at the moment when we set at least 1% of GDP, the calculations were showing that with that at least 1% of GDP, we can have a progress and a goal achieved of the law, which is converging of the regions to have more balancing. Next one. That we were not speaking out of a blue is presented by this graph. This graph shows you the coefficient of variation of the GDP per capita for the 8 statistical region. Easily you can see there were some progresses after the law was implemented in 2008, because that first year they were following the rules when the law was introduced. But later on, after 2011, the coefficient of variation until now is practically increasing, meaning that the regional development in Macedonia is still unbalanced and the gap is widening. So clearly this shows that colloquially speaking, in the Western Balkan countries, politicians are adopting the laws, but adopting the law means nothing if the law is not implemented. A part of the blame probably goes to Brussels, because in Brussels and the EU progress reports that our countries are receiving, usually there is the system and the mechanism of ticking and checking boxes. Is there a law on balanced regional development? Yes, it is. Check plus, very good. But what are the results of having the laws? Are the problems really addressed? What is the implementations? What is the gap? All these questions remains for the people living in the Balkans to absorb them with a lower quality of life. Okay, enough of these regions. And now the question. Now, where are the civil society organizations in all this? Here you can see the number of civil society organizations per thousand of population. Why this is a better measure? Because from some 13,000 civil society organizations registered in Macedonia, almost 6,000 are in the Skopje region. But so if it is not normalized by the population, that you will get really some strange skewed number. That's why I believe this number shows you better the variability and where the civil society organizations are more, they have more better environment to operate. Is of course it's the region of Skopje. We did research with field research focus groups and survey with the civil society organizations, and their perception on questions like, are you getting engaged with the regional policies formally? Are there any institutionalized mechanisms that you cooperate with the councils and the centers for development of the regions in Macedonia? And similar questions. Their perception is that the networking of the civil society organization is of a low level, meaning that the civil society organizations are searching for more economies of scale and to merge their power in front of them being presented as a credible partner to the regional centers for development. Then the politicians at local and regional level, and the municipal and regional level, are establishing so-called phantom civil society organizations that are gongos type of civil society organizations, just to take the money from the transfers allocated from the municipalities and the regions, and practically discrediting the genuine civil society organization. Then it is very important that they were even statistically significant, I will show you later. The difference between urban and rural environment for civil society organization in Macedonia is very, very important. Next is that, of course, as in the Balkan countries, the civil society organizations are not sustainable, but what does it mean, not sustainable? I mean, not sustainable also means that you are not attacked by the Public Revenue Office, that you are not attacked by a politician. So sustainability is not only being financially sustainable. And in this context, it is fair to say that civil society organizations in the Western Balkans are not depending on the membership fee. Philanthropy is low, and it's most likely, and for sure, it's driven by the donor money. Then, for Albania as well, as it is in Macedonia, the migration is a factor for the development and sustainability of civil society organizations. It's reported by many of the civil society activists is that most of the people that are beyond 40 years of age are passive and are not interested to influence and to participate in the balanced regional development. Now this has probably something to do with this discouraged type of people. Just like in with the unemployment statistics, if you are unemployed more than 1 year, you are a discouraged worker because your social norms you are not interacting socially with the people, so practically you're discouraged and you're using all the skills that are ready for you to participate in the labor market. The similar goes for the civil society organizations as well. Luis, may I ask you? Now, given all the focus groups and field work, these are the explanatory variables that we identified. That we used later for a panel econometric model in order to find out which of these variables are statistically significant for the difference of the GDP per capita of the 8 regions in Macedonia. The results of the panel fixed effects econometric model shows that in time, so the time factor is not statistically significant. What is significant is the urban-rural attribute of the civil society organizations. And very interesting is that the population is not statistically significant variable for the GDP per capita. So the economies of scale and that type of literature that are going into the GDP growth and all this doesn't show any correlation with the difference of the GDP per capita of the regions. So, and with this I finish. What are the recommendations? So, there must be some plans and procedures to institutionalize the cooperation between the civil society sector and the regions. By regions, I mean what is the institutional and legal recognition. Is it a center for development? Is it a planning region? Or is it just a ministry that is in charge of it? So it's irrelevant of that, but there is a need for formalizing and institutionalizing the cooperation. Then, of course, there is a need for higher transparency in funding the civil society organizations from the municipalities and the region. And finally, I mean, what kind of recommendation is if I say the government should respect the law? I mean, that doesn't mean anything. I mean, it is already in the law that it should be at least 1% of GDP. But the government is not respecting it. So, what is missing here? What is missing in Macedonia, and I believe in West Balkan countries, is that the social contract of a parliamentary democracy is not operational. It is not operational because an important factor is missing, and that is the pressure from the public. But in order to have a pressure from the public, you need to have free media, because it's the media that pass on the messages from us, from experts. So if you don't have free media, then you have a captured media state. So the link between the media and the public to get the right information so that you will have informed voters is not operational. Only free media, transparent and informed public can make the right pressure to have more accountable politicians in order for me not to put in the next, my next presentation, wherever or whenever, the government needs to respect the law. I mean, what to say to them. And with this, I rest and I'm open for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
When it comes to regions, can I have the mic, please? Thank you. It was very revealing, and I liked the way you have been thinking. And indeed, that's something that is always on our minds. My first question, I have several questions. Let me start first. I'm coming from an absurd country, because we have been regionalized probably a bit too much. I just calculated it. We have a budget of 110 billion a year, national budget of 110 billion a year, and we have a GDP of 466 billion a year, and out of the 110 billion, 75 billion goes to the regions. Yeah? So it's 16% of GDP per year. So probably it's a bit absurd than anything. But my first question is, what do you understand by the civil? What is civil society for you?
Well, we got into this discussion when doing this research. So basically, in our research, we took what is as per the law on the not-for-profit organizations. So if you are registered as per the law of not-for-profit organizations, then you are considered as civil society organizations.
So